Today, I will share with you how I write with a writing buddy that never sleeps. It really leveled up my writing, and I think it will be incredibly useful for your work too. Are you getting tired of ChatGPT's endless regurgitation of SEO-optimized articles and social media posts? I am. Well, and even ChatGPT is getting tired of that at this point. Too many people use the trendy AI as a text generator, and too few people use it as a highly capable writing partner that never sleeps. When I first ran into ChatGPT, it was amazing, but I swore that I would never use its output verbatim. Between it being easily detected and occasionally completely fabricated, it just doesn't get my style and tone just right. But it can certainly help me write better. The trick? Well, I treat it like an editor, a proofreader, and a disgruntled reader at the same time. I make it an enemy of my text and let it attack it as vigorously as possible. And then I incorporate that feedback into my next draft that I write. So here's how I use conversational AI to strengthen my argument by making ChatGPT argue against my writing. The most impactful way of using ChatGPT mid-process as a writer has been using it as a skeptic. After I've written my first draft of anything I write, I paste the whole thing into a ChatGPT session, and then I prompt the AI to act like someone who disagrees vehemently with anything that I'm writing about. I'm making the AI into my personal devil's advocate. One of the benefits of ChatGPT is that it's trained on millions of think pieces and opinions, and that includes the polar opposites of my personal thoughts and my feelings as well. So instead of having to step outside of my own perspective all the time, I can use ChatGPT to play that part most of the time. I asked the AI to list the top 3 arguments that someone opposed to my kind of thinking would disagree with, and then why they would disagree with that. The response to this single prompt alone often gives me food for thought that can lead to a complete rewrite of the article because I see something that I completely forgot when I first drafted it. Usually, I'm so trapped in my own ocean of bias, and just the mention of a counter-argument allows me to burst that bubble. What would an opponent of my school of thought claim? How would they attack even a well-reasoned article? That's what ChatGPT can do. So I then ask it to give a few examples of answers to those points of criticism. They're usually not very good, they're very generic and unspecific, but they do point me in a direction that I can explore with my own arguments. I run this prompt for every long-form article that I write, sometimes even tweets. If the points of contention are strong enough, I immediately try to defuse them right there and then by expanding my article to address these concerns. And this usually doesn't take more than 10 minutes for an article, but it's time incredibly well spent because it makes it much more defensible and just more approachable. ChatGPT is good at a few more things that I occasionally ask it to do with my writing, not just being a devil's advocate. Sometimes I write something that feels unfinished. Right? The thoughts are there, but they're not really clear. And ask ChatGPT about what is missing from this to make it more cohesive of an argument, which tends to highlight the missing pieces of the puzzle, and I can go in and fix them. The AI is also surprisingly good at detecting the emotional subtext of any given passage. I often ask it which emotional arcs exist in the article and where do they clash, which regularly highlights a way too abrupt change of tone that I can then smooth out in the article as I write the next draft. And none of these questions asked of the text are in any way novel or magical, but the speed at which ChatGPT can allow you to reflect on them, that's the awesome part of this experience. The other area that ChatGPT can help with is the quality and accuracy of examples. In my writing, I highlight real-world businesses, examples, and founder journeys a lot, but I write from within my own echo chamber, and that makes a whole lot of sense to me, but it doesn't necessarily connect with all my readers who come from outside of that echo chamber. So for this, I have found it helpful to ask ChatGPT to find and explain any confusing examples for an audience of X. If it finds such examples, then I ask it to come up with better examples, which tends to surface names and ideas that I may have missed in my own research and exploration. It broadens both my own mind and the compatibility surface of the text. But there's one big problem here: ChatGPT's tendency to make things up. Any claim related to the real world should be thoroughly fact-checked outside of ChatGPT. Even frameworks and concepts that it suggests need to be researched. They might not exist outside of the ChatGPT session. I once asked it to find studies on mental health topics, and the AI gave me 10 scientific paper titles, of which only 3 actually existed. And that brings me to another editorial job that ChatGPT can be used for: fact-checking. Wait, what? Didn't I just say that ChatGPT hallucinates things all the time? Well, yes, which is why that I never trust the examples it gives, but that doesn't mean that I can't treat ChatGPT as a writing truther in a way. I ask the AI to be extremely skeptical and surface the 5 parts of the article that really need to be fact-checked. I make ChatGPT look for anything that sounds particularly unbelievable and search for misleading phrases. And since ChatGPT is pretty much a gaslighting engine at scale, after all, its primary purpose is to come up with believable and convincing text, I have found that it's pretty good at finding this kind of tension in my written content too. It knows what it's doing, and it knows how to find it in your work too. I often ask the AI to point out any logical fallacies in my text. It has so far found a lot of confirmation bias, a few no true Scotsman arguments, and a surprisingly high amount of loaded questions. It's really useful to have a logical reasoning system. Take a look at my drafts. And I want my articles to be inclusive and appeal not to just a tiny niche audience, but a lot of people. And for that, one final thing that I use mid-writing is the perspective shift. I asked ChatGPT 2 questions. From a beginner's perspective, what is confusing and what is complicated? And from an expert's perspective, what is oversimplified or misleading? The resulting list of paragraphs and sections gives me ample opportunity to make the article more comprehensible to either audience, if I want. If it's meant to be for a specific audience, I can skip this step, but any topic that touches the lives of all kinds of peoples and all sorts of journeys, like whenever I write about mental health, I want to leave no reader behind. Well, there you have it. Adversarial writing with generative AI. That's my way of rounding out an article. When you use ChatGPT as your part-time writing nemesis, you'll end up with a piece of writing that is both completely written in your own voice because you write it, but it's also more accessible for readers inside and outside of your existing readership because the AI gave you an opportunity to look at it from somebody else's view. And that's it for today. Thank you for listening to The Bootstrap Founder. You can find me on Twitter at ArvidKahl, ARVIDKAHL. You'll find my books and my Twitter course there as well. If you want to support me and the show, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, get the podcast in your podcast player of choice, and leave a rating and a review by going to ratethispodcast.com/founder. Any of this will truly help the show. So thank you so much for listening and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.